So I'm on the last chapter of this book, A Secular Age, by Charles Taylor, and I've been really impressed with it so far. He does a really good job laying out the territory. He's not necessarily arguing very strongly in favor of one particular religious or atheistic view over another. He's sort of just describing what it's like to be a human being alive during a secular age, and also trying to describe how we got into this secular age and all of that. And I found a pretty good review of the book by Mark Vernon that I'm going to read a part of to give you an idea of the points that he's trying to make in the book. Um, so there's 10 major bullet points, points that Taylor tries to emphasize in the book. The first is pluralism. The dominant feature of the Western secular age is one of radical pluralism. We live in a world in which every day we rub up against people with very different worldviews than our own: theistic, atheistic, agnostic, of every conceivable variety. This ease of confrontation in itself would mark our age as challenging. However, it becomes threatening, since in the secular age it is also quite possible to imagine ourselves changing our own worldview. Before modern times, a Christian might have met, say, an atheist, but they could no more have thought of becoming one than of changing their sex. Today, such radical changes are entirely viable. These cross pressures are a defining characteristic of our sense of self. Secularization. The subtraction theory of secularization, the idea that what science and reason have achieved in the modern world is a stripping away of needless, primitive superstitions, revealing the essential rational core of humankind, is wrong. Rather, Taylor argues, secularization is a paradigm shift, the origins of which lie within religion itself, particularly the Reformation drive to collapse the difference between the higher flourishing implicit in the religious lives of monks and priests and the lower flourishing of lay people engaged in everyday life. Lower flourishing is anthropocentric, and during the 18th century this immanent dimension to life came to dominate, not least with the rise of deism that conceived of human beings living in a benign moral order designed by God. The central ethic of contemporary atheism, that rational individuals should constructively engage in a society of mutual benefit, is the direct successor of this optimism, the distant God of deism being easy to drop in the embrace of an exclusive worldview. However, religion lives on because people's desire for the transcendent is irrepressible, not least in the contemporary crisis of meaning, where in spite of being able to embark upon projects that are fulfilling in themselves, such as work, family, and leisure, many people still feel something fundamental is missing. The nub of the issue is the legacy of calling the medieval sense of higher flourishing into question. Also, the world at the start of the 21st century does not seem so benign. Meaning. The contemporary crisis of meaning, the modern malaise, is arguably unique in the history of humanity. In the pre-modern enchanted world, the problem, if anything, was an overdetermination of meaning, with spirits abounding and salvation to be won. Self. Another central idea of Taylor's is that the medieval self was porous. The contemporary self is buffered, though we still have a sense of porousness in, say, the experience of realizing that your emotional self exists somewhere in between yourself and the people you love. However, because the buffered self is ideally conceived of as autonomous, lonely solipsism is another characteristic of the age. Time. Time has changed in the modern world too. Before it was hierarchical and gathered at special moments like holy days, time could also burst open with chaos at carnivals and festivals, feasts of social reversal. Now, time is linear and instrumental, and therefore readily experienced as flat and meaningless. So there is a desire to regain a sense of shape and meaning in time, hence the popularity, say, of history and autobiography, and the extraordinary outpouring of feeling in moments like at the death of Diana, Princess Diana, when normal time appeared to stand still. Discipline. Discipline has become an important feature of Western modernity and is seen as key to the pursuit of happiness. At a political level, the disciplines of democracy; at a personal level, the disciplines of polite civil society. With this discipline comes stability and prosperity, and then health and pleasure, and hence happiness. Conversely, individuals or events that challenge this discipline, from hoodies to suicide bombers, appear to threaten the very fabric of this felicitous state of affairs. Anti-humanism. So-called anti-humanism has arisen in response to atheistic humanism. It shares the conviction that life and meaning must be found within an immanent frame of reference, but believes that the aforementioned disciplining nature of humanism is deadening of human spirit. Hence, for example, Nietzsche celebrated the Dionysian. Atheistic humanism, too, has its moments of ill discipline, such as with the experience of the sublime in nature. But whereas anti-humanism recognizes that the anthropocentric worldview may not be adequate to contain these experiences, atheistic humanism insists it must be, thereby redisciplining the experience. Religious. To be religious may be one or more of many things, but in the same way that atheistic conviction is not primarily a set of doctrines about the world, such as that God is dead, but a set of powerful beliefs about the way the world is best viewed, religious conviction is a sense that the world is best viewed from a transcendent, visionary perspective that requires the transformation of the individual. Sex. Religious institutions have their analog of disciplining, not least since they initiated the project of disciplining life at the Reformation. However, since the secular age, they do not exercise political power. They focus instead on the personal. Hence, sexual ethics has become a point of tremendous contestation and resistance in contemporary religious life. Dialogue. The confrontation between atheistic humanism and religious belief is misconstrued, since many of the faults that one side finds in the other, such as that atheism is empty or that theism is primitive, actually conceal the same faults in the side being defended too. This is because the secular age is a context with which all people are still trying to grapple. The persistent pluralism of our times is evidence enough that no one worldview is satisfactory enough. The problem of how to understand the apparently unchangeable propensity of human beings to violence is another troubling case in point. According to atheism, it is irrational. According to theism, it is sinful, and so on both counts should lessen, if not disappear. But violence remains, arguably magnified, which suggests something else. Given that the secular age is one of violent extremes, there could be dialogue between the two sides, and the multitude of positions in between to face this question, and without casting stones, that is, without recourse to more violence.